in a small zoo comfortably located on the outskirts of a noisy city. A story began that later touched the hearts of many. A young zoo employee named Artium, a man with a kind soul and love for animals, was returning home. After a long day at work, walking along a deserted road, he noticed in the tall grass near the edge of a small trembling lump. It was a golden retriever puppy, wet, dirty, and clearly abandoned to its fate. The baby's eyes, full of fear and hope, left Artium no choice. He carefully picked up the puppy, wrapped him in his jacket, and decided that he would not leave him in trouble at the zoo. For the puppy, they quickly found a warm corner where he was fed and warmed up. Artium gave the dog the name Meera, which meant peace and reflected her calm, affectionate disposition. Meera quickly got used to the new environment. Her playfulness and friendly nature made her a real favorite among the employees. She became a little star of the zoo, bringing joy to everyone who encountered her. Meera grew up in the zoo, surrounded by the care and attention of her. Golden fur glittered in the sun, and an irrepressible curiosity made her explore every corner of the territory. She was especially fascinated by the enclosures with big cats, lions, and tigers, who, sitting behind bars, seemed to her like mysterious giants of the world. She often sat nearby, carefully watching their movements, as if trying to understand their world. She became Artium's shadow, everywhere, following her savior if he fed the animals or cleaned the enclosures. Meera was nearby, cheerfully wagging her tail. Her devotion and ability to lift the mood touched the hearts of all the employees, even on the most different days. Her joyful barking was heard throughout the zoo, reminding everyone of the simple joys of life. Meera became not just a dog, but a real symbol of kindness and unity in this unusual place where people and animals lived. Bok. Meera, golden retriever, became the soul of the zoo, but her story was inextricably linked with Artium, a man whose life was dedicated to saving animals. Artium did not just feed the animals and clean the enclosures. He was a real defender of nature. His passion for helping our smaller brothers began in childhood when he saved a wounded sparrow, and over the years it turned into a calling. He collaborated with several wildlife conservation organizations who knew him as a man willing to drop everything to save an animal. Abandoned chicks, orphaned raccoons, wounded foxes. Artium found a shelter for everyone, treated them, and took care of them until they got stronger. His phone rang non-stop. Volunteers asked to find a home for a sick animal. Locals reported a cat stuck in a tree or a dog hit. Artium never refused, even if it meant sleepless nights or long trips out of town to the zoo. He became a legend. Colleagues admired his dedication, and visitors, seeing how tenderly he treated animals, often thanked him for his kindness. For Artium, caring for animals was not a job but the meaning of life, and he believed that every creature deserves a chance at peace. Following him, as if accepting his love for the world around him, and their connection inspired everyone around. Thousands of characters. Artium, whose life was dedicated to saving animals, and his faithful companion Peace, have become an integral part zoo. But their story soon took an unexpected turn. One early morning, when the first rays of the sun were just breaking through the thick clouds, Artium received a call from a wildlife conservation organization with which he had worked for many years. The voice on the other end of the line sounded excited. In a remote reserve located hundreds of kilometers from the city, there was a disaster. 3 tiny tiger cubs, barely born, were left without a mother. The tigress, for unknown reasons, possibly due to illness or an attack by poachers, abandoned her cubs, leaving them helpless in the dense Thickets without immediate help. The babies were doomed to die as they were, not yet able to feed themselves or defend themselves from predators and the harsh conditions of the wild. The reserve volunteers who discovered the tiger cubs urgently contacted Artium, knowing his reputation as a person who never leaves animals in trouble. Artium, accustomed to saving city birds, injured squirrels, or stray dogs, thought for a moment caring for newborn predators of such a scale was a completely new challenge for him, requiring not only courage but also quick decision-making, but his heart full of compassion did not allow him to refuse. He immediately took action, contacted the zoo management to prepare a place for the cubs and made arrangements with veterinarians who could examine the babies upon arrival. Within a few hours, Artium organized the transportation of the cubs to the city, providing them with temporary shelter in a warm room of the zoo where they could be protected from the cold and ensure safety when the cubs arrived. Their condition was alarming. They were weak, their tiny bodies were shaking, and their plaintive meowing was heartbreaking. The veterinarians carefully examined the babies, confirmed that they were healthy and had every chance of growing into strong, powerful predators, but only on condition that they would be fed immediately. A serious problem arose here. The cubs were still too small to eat solid food, categorically refused to drink artificial milk from the bottles offered by the staff. Artium and his colleagues tried different mixtures, changed nipples, adjusted the temperature of the milk, but nothing helped. The babies turned away, weakly squealing, and their strength was melting with each passing hour worked against them, and Artium understood that it was necessary to find an unconventional solution to save these fragile creatures. He walked around the zoo thinking about the options, and his gaze involuntarily stopped at the world that lay peacefully nearby, watching the fuss in Artium's head. A bold, almost incredible idea began to emerge that could become salvation for the tiger cubs and change their fate forever. Artium stood in front of the tiger cubs, whose weak voices echoed in the warm room of the zoo, and felt how time was inexorably slipping away. Three tiny predators, barely holding on to life, refused artificial milk, and their fragile bodies weakened with each passing hour. Veterinarians surrounding the babies exchanged anxious glances, repeating that the tiger cubs were healthy and could survive, but only if they could be fed in the next few hours. Artium, accustomed to finding a way out of the most difficult situations, feverishly thought over the options. He tried different mixtures, experimented with the temperature of the milk, even consulted on the phone with colleagues from other zoos, but nothing worked. The tiger cubs were too small and frightened, turned away from the bottles. Their plaintive meowing became quieter and quieter, and the zoo employees watching this struggle began to lose hope. At this moment, Artium, walking around the room in search of inspiration, noticed Meera, his faithful golden retriever, who was lying in the corner carefully watching the fuss with her smart kind eyes. Meera had recently become a mother of her own puppies, and her maternal instinct was at its peak. She was still feeding her babies, and her milk was nutritious and warm, exactly what could save the tiger cubs. A bold, almost crazy idea flashed in Artium's head. What if he introduced the tiger cubs to Meera? It was a risky step. No one knew how the dog would react to predators, even tiny ones, or how the tiger cubs would perceive her. The zoo had never conducted such experiments, and Artium's colleagues, upon hearing his proposal, were skeptical at first. Some were afraid that Meera would get scared or show aggression. Others doubted that the tiger cubs would accept dog, but Artium, trusting his instincts and knowing the good nature of the measure, decided to take a risk with bated breath. He called Meera and slowly led her to the cage where the tiger cubs lay. The zoo employees watched with bated breath what was happening, ready to intervene at any moment. Meera, feeling the tension, warily sniffed, but her tail trembled slightly as if she understood the importance of the moment. When she was brought into the room, she stopped, looking attentively at the three little lumps that were weakly moving on the soft bedding. Artium, standing nearby, quietly encouraged her, stroking her back. To everyone's amazement, Meera showed neither fear nor hostility. She slowly approached the tiger cubs. Her movements were cautious, almost maternal. She sniffed each baby. Her warm nose touched their trembling bodies and then, as if having made a decision, lay down next to her, exposing her belly. The hungry tiger cubs, smelling the milk, instinctively reached out to her. Their tiny paws clung to Meera's fluffy fur and weak mouths began to drink greedily. Meera, as if understanding her role, lay quietly. Her eyes glowed with kindness and patience. The employees watching this scene could not contain their emotions. Someone whispered words of admiration. Someone filmed what was happening on the phone to capture this incredible moment. Artium, standing aside, felt how the tension let go and a smile appeared on his face. His idea worked. Meera accepted the tiger cubs as her own puppies, and the babies, having found a source of warmth and food, got a chance at life. This day became the beginning of an amazing connection that will soon shock everyone in the zoo of the world. A golden retriever with a kind heart performed a miracle by accepting 3 orphaned tiger cubs, and this moment became a turning point in the life of the zoo. From the day she first allowed the babies to drink her milk, her connection with them turned into something more than just care. Meera became a real mother for the tiger cubs, surrounding them with the warmth that they lost in the first days of life. Every morning she softly stepped to their bedding, and her fluffy tail swayed slightly and her eyes glowed with calm and love. The tiger cubs are still weak, but already those who were beginning to show curiosity reached out to her, clinging with their tiny claws to her golden fur. They greedily drank her milk, and their little bodies pressed themselves against her sides, and Meera, as if understanding her mission, lay patiently, allowing them to feel safe. She licked them, cleaning their spotted fur, and gently nudged them with her nose when they crawled too far, like real mothers do. The zoo staff, who had initially doubted Artium's idea, now could not take their eyes off this unusual family. Every day they gathered at the enclosure, watching how Meera took care of the cubs, and their hearts were filled with admiration. The veterinarians who regularly checked the babies noted the incredible progress thanks to Meera's nutritious milk and her tireless care. The cubs quickly gained weight, their eyes became brighter and their movements more confident. They began to play, awkwardly jumping and trying to catch Meera's tail, who with good-natured indulgence allowed them to be naughty. These moments brought smiles. Even the most severe zoo workers and visitors who were allowed to catch a glimpse of this scene left with stories of a miracle witnessed by Artium, whose idea united the dog and the cubs. Spent every free minute with them. He made sure that Meera had enough food and rest because her role required enormous strength. He brought her the best food, arranged soft bedding, and even talked to her as if she could understand his gratitude. Meera, as if feeling his support, responded to devoted looks and a slight wag of her tail. For Artium, this picture of a dog surrounded by cubs who saw her as their mother was proof that love and care can overcome any boundaries, even those that separate species. 3 months passed, and the cubs noticeably grew. Their fur became thicker, paws got Stronger and playfulness turned into real energy of young predators. They began to try solid food, carefully prepared by veterinarians, but still returned to Meera to cuddle up to her or play Meera despite their increasing size continued to treat them with the same tenderness. She patiently endured their pranks when they lightly bit her ears or jumped on her trying to start a fight. The cubs in turn perceived her as the only mother they knew, and their bond became stronger and stronger. This unusual family became a legend in the zoo. The staff joked that Meera was the best teacher one could wish for, and visitors, learning the story, asked to take a photo of this amazing but Artium knew that new challenges awaited them ahead. The cubs grew, and their predatory instincts could manifest themselves at any moment. He tried not to think about the fact that one day they would have to part, but deep down he knew that this day was inevitable. For now he enjoyed every moment spent with Meera and her adopted children, unaware that fate was preparing another incredible test of the world for them, and her adopted cubs were a symbol of incredible love, capable of overcoming the boundaries of nature. But time inexorably made its own adjustments to their story. The cubs that Meera fed and raised from their mother with care, they transformed from tiny lumps into strong, energetic young predators. Their spotted fur glistened in the sun, their paws became more and more powerful, and their playful jumps were increasingly accompanied by a low growl, giving away their predatory nature. They had already completely switched to solid food, meat carefully selected by veterinarians, and their size was almost equal to Meera. Artium, watching their growth, experienced mixed feelings. Pride that the cubs survived and got stronger thanks to Meera, and quiet sadness from the realization that their time together was coming to an end. Veterinarians and zoo staff regularly discussed the future of the cubs, came to the inevitable conclusion the babies need to be transferred to a separate enclosure where they can adapt to life among their own kind. Their claws are now sharp and long, and teeth capable of easily tearing meat could accidentally harm the world, even if the cubs had malicious intent. In addition, their instincts began to manifest themselves during games. They increasingly bit each other or tried to hunt imaginary prey, which was a natural development but posed a threat to the dog, who still saw them as her children. Artium, understanding the need for this, Suga put off the decision for a long time, but one day, seeing how one of the tiger cubs accidentally scratched Meera, he realized that there was no time to hesitate. Separation was hard for everyone. On the day when the tiger cubs were transported to the new enclosure, Meera, as if anticipating the changes, restlessly followed Artium, and her eyes were full of anxiety. The tiger cubs, placed in a spacious enclosure with artificial rocks and trees, at first looked around in confusion and then began to explore the new space, but their gazes kept returning to Meera standing on the other side of the bars. Meera sat for a long time by the enclosure, her muzzle almost touched against, and a quiet whine betrayed her melancholy. Artium, stroking her head, whispered words of comfort, but he himself could barely contain his emotions. This scene touched all the employees, many of whom surreptitiously wiped away tears, realizing that this unusual family would no longer be together. Artium thought that there the story ended and tried to focus on caring for the world that returned to its usual affairs, but her gaze sometimes rushed to the tiger enclosure, as if in the hope of seeing her adopted children. 2 years had passed. The tiger cubs had turned into young, powerful tigers. Their growl was carried throughout the zoo, and visitors admired their grace and the power of the world. Still the same, kind and devoted, continued to accompany Artium, but in her eyes sometimes a shadow of sadness flashed. Artium, immersed in work, tried not to think about the past, but fate was preparing a new test for them. One summer day, a powerful hurricane hit the city, the strongest in recent decades. The sky darkened, the wind howled, tearing branches from trees, and the rain turned the streets into rivers. The zoo staff, including Artium, stopped rescuing animals, transferring them to a safe shelter in the chaos. Among the screams and roars of the beasts of the world, frightened by thunder and lightning, got lost. Artium, noticing her absence, felt his heart squeezed with horror. He called her, making his way through the storm, but Meera, disoriented and soaking wet, instinctively ran to the only place she associated with safety, the tiger enclosure where she once took care of her adopted children. This impulse of complete despair and hope became the beginning of a new incredible turn in their story that no one could have predicted. The hurricane that hit the city turned the zoo into an arena of struggle for survival. The wind tore off the roofs, rain lashed the enclosures, and the roar of the frightened animals merged with the rumble of thunder of the world. The golden retriever, lost in this chaos, ran through the storm. Her paws slipped on the wet ground, and her heart pounded with fear. Instinct led her to the tiger enclosure, the place where years ago she had nursed 3 orphaned tiger cubs, becoming a mother to them. Soaking wet and trembling, she jumped over a low barrier that collapsed under the pressure of the wind and found herself in a spacious enclosure where she was met by the dark silhouettes of adult tigers. Their eyes glowed in the semi-darkness, and a low growl foreshadowed the danger of the world. Pressing her ears backed up to the fence, her fur was matted with water, and a plaintive whine barely made it through the noise of the hurricane. Artium, noticing the absence of Meera, made his way through the zoo, shouting her name. When he saw how she disappeared into the tiger enclosure, he was seized with horror. He knew that adult predators, frightened by the storm, can be unpredictable, and Meera, fragile and defenseless, was easy prey for them. Grabbing a flashlight, he rushed to the enclosure, ignoring the rain pouring into his eyes and the slippery path under his feet. Running up to the fence, he froze, seeing how several large tigers slowly approached Meera. Their claws scraped the ground and muscles tensed, preparing to jump. Artium screamed, trying to distract them, but his voice was drowned out by the roar of the wind. It seemed that in a moment Meera would become a victim of predators, and nothing could save her. But at that moment something incredible happened. 3 young tigers, now adults with powerful bodies and thick spotted fur, suddenly jumped out of the darkness and stood between Meera and their older brothers. These were the same tiger cubs that Meera had nursed 2 years ago, her adopted children whose bond with her had stood the test of time. Their eyes sparkled with determination, and a loud roar made the adult tigers freeze. The young predators fluffed up their tails and bared their fangs, took a defensive position, making it clear that they would not allow their mother to be touched. Surprisingly, but the older tigers, having assessed the determination of their opponents, slowly retreated. Their growl died down, and they disappeared into the depths of the enclosure, seeking shelter from the storm. Meera, still trembling but feeling the change, raised her head. Her eyes met the eyes of the young tigers, and there was no fear in them, only warmth and recognition. The tiger cubs, now powerful animals, approached her. Their warm sides touched her wet, for they surrounded Meera, sheltering her from the wind and rain with their bodies, as if returning to her the protection that she gave them in as a child. One of the tigers licked her muzzle, another poked his nose into her side, and the third lay down next to her, shielding her from the gusts of the hurricane of the world. Feeling their warmth, she relaxed, Her trembling subsided and her quiet whining was replaced by calm breathing. Artium stood by the fence. He could not believe his eyes, tears mixed with the rain on his face when he looked at this scene. The employees who ran after him froze in amazement. Their lanterns illuminated an incredible picture, a dog surrounded by tigers, who protected her like a family. This connection, born of love and care, the world's, turned out to be stronger than time, nature, and even a hurricane. When the storm died down, the tiger cubs did not leave the world, staying close until Artium came to pick her up. He carefully led her out of the enclosure, and the young tigers looked after her. Their eyes glowed with quiet gratitude. This story spread throughout the city and then further, becoming a legend about how love can unite those who are separated by nature. Visitors to the zoo learning about Meera and her cubs brought her treats, and the staff called her a hero. Artium, hugging his faithful friend, knew that their connection with the tigers would remain in their hearts forever, reminding everyone that kindness can work miracles that are not subject to time.